Want more HFY stories? Smash that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications.
The Galactic Council Chamber was a cathedral of polished obsidian and starlight, its vaulted ceiling arching into a simulated nebula that pulsed with the slow, deliberate breath of dying suns. Ambassador Kalen of the Vaith Dominion stood rigid, his chitin-like plates gleaming under the artificial glow, mandibles clicking in a rhythm that betrayed his simmering fury. Opposite him, Ambassador Zorvith of the Kresh hegemony loomed, a hulking mass of crystalline armor and barely contained violence. Between them, Ambassador Elias Thorn of Earth sat with unnerving calm, his hands folded on the obsidian table, a single, unassuming terracotta pot resting before him. The air crackled with the weight of millennia. The Vaith and Kresh had been locked in a genocidal war since their ancestors first mistook a comet for an omen. Now, they were here to discuss peace, brokered by the upstart humans who had somehow become the galaxy's reluctant mediators. "Your proposal is an insult," Kalen hissed, a low vibration that rattled the table. "The Vaith do not negotiate with the shattered." Zorvith's crystalline form shimmered. "The Kresh do not beg for mercy from insects." Elias sighed, a sound that carried the weight of 1,000 failed negotiations. "Gentlemen, this isn't about pride. It's about survival. The fungal bloom is consuming systems on the galactic rim. If you don't stop fighting each other, you'll both be consumed." The fungal bloom, a name that sent shivers through even the most hardened species. A voracious, sentient network of mycelium that consumed entire worlds, leaving behind nothing but sterile husks and the faint, discordant hum of its collective consciousness. The Vaith and Kresh had fought it, separately, and failed. Now, the bloom was spreading, and their war had left them vulnerable. Elias leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "We have a solution. A deterrent. But it requires cooperation." He gestured to the terracotta pot. Inside, a single, unremarkable sprout of green and gold leaves pulsed faintly, as if with a heartbeat. Kalen's mandibles froze. "What is that?" "A plant," Elias said simply. "We call it Alloy Eater. It's a terraforming organism, designed to break down metallic contaminants in soil. We've been refining it for decades." Zorvith scoffed, a sound like grinding stone. "A weed? You bring a weed to a council of war." "It's not just a weed," Elias replied, his eyes gleaming with a dangerous light. "It breaks down alien alloys. Specifically, the crystalline alloys the fungal bloom uses to construct its hives. And its spores, they're toxic to the bloom's neural network." The silence that followed was absolute. Kalen and Zorvith stared at the pot as if it contained a bomb. And in a way, it did. The trial began in the ruins of Xylos 7, a world that had been a Kresh stronghold until the fungal bloom had arrived. Now, it was a graveyard of shattered crystal and writhing, black mycelium that pulsed with a sickly green light. Elias stood at the edge of the wasteland, flanked by Kalen and Zorvith, the Alloy Eater plant clutched in a reinforced container. The air was thick with the smell of decay and the faint, discordant hum of the bloom. "This is madness," Kalen muttered, antennae twitching. "You expect us to trust this weed?" "I expect you to trust the data," Elias said, his voice steady. "We've tested it on bloom samples. It works." Zorvith's crystalline armor shimmered. "And if it doesn't? If this is a trick to weaken us?" "Then we all die," Elias said bluntly. "The bloom doesn't negotiate. It consumes." With a nod, Elias activated the container. The Alloy Eater plant, now the size of a sapling, was lowered onto the ground. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, its roots, thin as threads, burrowed into the soil. The mycelium around it recoiled, as if burned. A low, guttural hum filled the air, the sound of the bloom's collective consciousness in pain. The roots began to glow, a brilliant gold that spread through the black strands like a fire through oil. The mycelium withered, crumbling into dust. Kalen and Zorvith watched in stunned silence. "By the void," Kalen breathed. Zorvith's mandibles clicked, a rare sound of awe. "It's working." Elias allowed himself a small smile. "It's just the beginning. We need to cultivate it, mass-produce it, and deploy it across the bloom's territory. But for that, we need your help. Your technology, your knowledge of the bloom's weaknesses. The unspoken hung in the air, and your cooperation." Kalen and Zorvith exchanged a look, a flicker of something other than hatred in their eyes. Survival. The most primal instinct of all. What do you propose? Zorvith growled. Elias laid out the plan. A joint mission to the Bloom's primary hive on the planet Yuggoth, a world of perpetual twilight and razor-sharp fungal growth. They would plant the alloy eater at the hive's core, using Kresh stealth technology and Vaith biological scanners to navigate the treacherous terrain. It was a suicide mission, but it was their only chance. Kalen and Zorvith agreed, their pride temporarily set aside by the grim reality of their situation. The war could wait. The Bloom could not. The journey to Yuggoth was a study in contrasts. The Kresh warship's Sundered Pride was a brutalist masterpiece of crystalline armor and jagged edges, while the Vaith science vessel Silent Whisper was a sleek, bioorganic craft that hummed with quiet energy. They traveled in formation, a fragile alliance bound by desperation. Inside the Sundered Pride, Zorvith stood on the bridge, his crystalline form reflecting the star charts on the view screen. Kalen was there too, his antennae twitching as he monitored the biological readings. The Bloom's neural activity is increasing, Kalen reported, his voice tight. It's aware of us. Zorvith's mandibles clicked. Good. Let it know we're coming. Elias entered the bridge, the alloy eater plant secured in a climate-controlled container. We're approaching Yuggoth now, he said, his gaze fixed on the planet looming ahead. It was a nightmare of twisted fungal growths, black spores swirling in the atmosphere like a perpetual storm. The Bloom has fortified the hive, Kalen added. Its outer shell is layered with crystalline alloy. Our weapons will barely scratch it. That's where the alloy eater comes in, Elias said, patting the container. But we need to get it inside, which means we need to get close. Zorvith turned to face him, his crystalline eyes gleaming. The Kresh have a plan. We'll use a stealth shuttle to penetrate the hive's outer defenses. While the Bloom is distracted, you and the Vaith will plant the organism. Kalen's mandibles clicked in agreement. The Vaith will provide cover. Our bioweapons can disrupt the Bloom's smaller nodes, buying you time. Elias nodded. It's a good plan, but we need to move fast. The longer we wait, the stronger the Bloom becomes. The shuttle launch was tense, the Sundered Pride and Silent Whisper coordinating their attacks to draw the Bloom's attention. As they descended into Yuggoth's toxic atmosphere, the fungal growths writhed and reached for them like grasping claws. Hold steady. Zorvith's voice crackled over the comms. The Bloom is trying to ensnare us. Elias gripped the controls, his knuckles white. The shuttle lurched as a tendril of mycelium scraped against its hull. We're almost there, he said, his voice strained. Just a little longer. The hive was a cathedral of nightmare, its walls pulsing with a sickly green light, the air thick with the scent of decay and ozone. The stealth shuttle touched down in a cavernous chamber, its engines screaming in protest as the fungal growths wrapped around it like a vice. We're here, Elias said, unstrapping himself. Kalen, Zorvith, you're with me. The rest of you, provide cover. The four of them, Elias, Kalen, Zorvith, and a handful of elite soldiers from both species, exited the shuttle into the suffocating gloom. The walls were alive, covered in a thick layer of crystalline alloy that shimmered with an unnatural light. This is it, Elias said, unsealing the alloy eater container. The sapling pulsed faintly, its roots already twitching as if sensing the enemy. We need to plant it at the hive's core. According to the Vaith scans, it's through that tunnel. He pointed to a narrow passage where the fungal growth's thickest. Zorvith stepped forward, his crystalline armor gleaming. I'll lead the way. Kalen, you and your soldiers provide cover. Kalen nodded, his soldiers raising their weapons. Move. The passage was treacherous, the walls oozing a viscous black fluid that sizzled where it touched the ground. The air grew heavier, the hum of the Bloom's consciousness louder, a discordant symphony of rage and hunger. It's trying to communicate, Kalen said, his antennae twitching. It's afraid. Zorvith scoffed. The Bloom doesn't feel fear. It only consumes. It's more complex than that, Elias interjected. The Bloom is a collective. It thinks as one. And right now, it's sensing a threat it can't comprehend. They reached a vast chamber, the hive's core. A towering mass of crystalline alloy pulsed with energy, the source of the Bloom's power. Around it, smaller nodes writhed and pulsed, feeding it energy. This is it, Elias said, his voice filled with awe. The heart of the beast. He knelt, preparing to plant the alloy eater. But as he did, the chamber began to shake. The walls pulsed, and the nodes around them erupted into a frenzy. It's aware of us, Kalen shouted, raising his weapon. The bloom is mobilizing. Zorvatha's crystalline form shimmered as he raised his fists, energy crackling around them. Then we fight. The battle was a maelstrom of violence and desperation. The bloom's nodes erupted into a frenzy, launching tendrils of mycelium that lashed out like whips. Kalen's soldiers fired bioweapons that dissolved the tendrils on contact, but more kept coming. Zorvath charged forward, his crystalline fists shattering the nodes into dust, but each one he destroyed seemed to spawn two more. Elias worked frantically, digging a hole in the chamber's floor while the chaos raged around him. "I need more time," he shouted, sweat beading on his forehead. "The roots need to take hold." Kalen fired a volley of bioweapons, clearing a path. "I'm trying. The bloom is adapting." Zorvath roared as he shattered a massive node, its destruction sending a shockwave through the chamber. "It's weakening. Keep pushing." Elias plunged the alloy eater into the hole, covering it with soil. The sapling pulsed, its roots burrowing deep into the hive's core. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a brilliant gold light erupted from the sapling, spreading through the crystalline alloy like a wildfire. The bloom's hum intensified, a shriek of agony that vibrated through the very air. The nodes began to wither, crumbling into dust. The tendrils recoiled, writhing in pain. "It's working," Elias cried, relief flooding his voice. But the bloom was not defeated. It fought back with a vengeance, the chamber shaking as the hive itself rebelled. A massive tendril lashed out, striking Zorvath and sending him crashing into a wall. His crystalline armor cracked, and he slumped to the ground, unconscious. "Zorvath!" Kalen shouted, firing a volley of bioweapons to hold the tendril at bay. Elias scrambled to Zorvath's side, checking his pulse. "He's alive, but badly hurt." Kalen's mandibles clicked. "We have to keep fighting. The bloom is dying, but it's taking us with it." Elias looked at the alloy eater, its golden light now spreading through the hive like a lifeline. "It's almost done. We just need to hold on a little longer." The tendril lashed out again, but Kalen intercepted it, his bioweapons dissolving it into nothing. Another tendril struck, this time aimed at Elias. He dove aside, the tendril crashing into the ground where he'd been standing. The chamber was collapsing, the walls crumbling as the bloom died. "We have to get out of here," Kalen shouted, dragging Zorvath to his feet. Elias nodded, grabbing the container with the remaining alloy eater saplings. "Let's go." The escape was a frantic dash through the collapsing hive. The walls were crumbling, the air thick with dust and the dying hum of the bloom. Kalen supported Zorvath, who was barely conscious, while Elias led the way back to the stealth shuttle. "Hurry," Elias shouted, ducking as a chunk of the ceiling fell behind them. The shuttle was just ahead, its engines screaming as it prepared for liftoff. "We're almost there," Kalen grunted, hauling Zorvath up the ramp. Elias followed, sealing the hatch just as another tendril slammed into the shuttle. The engines roared to life, and the shuttle lurched upward, escaping the hive just as it collapsed into a pile of dust and ash. They were safe. For now. Inside the shuttle, the silence was deafening. Zorvath lay on the floor, his crystalline armor cracked and bleeding a viscous fluid. Kalen knelt beside him, his antennae twitching as he checked his vital signs. "He's alive," Kalen said, his voice uncharacteristically soft. "But he needs medical attention." Elias nodded, placing the container with the alloy eater saplings on the floor. "We did it. We stopped the bloom." Kalen looked at him, his mandibles clicking. "We did. But at what cost?" Elias sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It was worth it. The bloom was a threat to everyone. Now we have a chance." Kalen's gaze shifted to Zorvath, then back to Elias. "The Kresh and Vaith, we've been fighting for so long. I don't know if we can ever truly stop." Elias knelt beside Kalen, his voice gentle. "Maybe not. But maybe this shared enemy, it's a start. A way to build something new." Kalen was silent for a long moment, then nodded. "Maybe." The shuttle docked with the sundered Pride, and Zorvath was taken to the medical bay. Kalen and Elias stood on the bridge, watching Yuggoth receding in the view screen. The planet was silent now, a graveyard of fungal growths that no longer pulsed with life. "It's over," Elias said, a sense of relief washing over him. Kalen's mandibles clicked. For now. The journey back to the Galactic Council was long, but it was different. The Kresh and Vaith no longer glared at each other. They sat in silence, but it was a comfortable silence, born of shared trauma and of fragile hope. When they arrived, the council chamber was abuzz with anticipation. The other species watched as Kalen and Zorvith stood before them, Elias beside them. "We have stopped the fungal bloom," Elias announced, his voice ringing with authority. "The alloy eater works. It is a deterrent, a weapon against the darkness." The chamber erupted in cheers, but Elias held up a hand. "But this is not just about the bloom. It's about what comes next. The Kresh and Vaith have been at war for millennia. They have lost billions. It's time to end it." Kalen and Zorvith exchanged a look, then stepped forward. "We agree," Kalen said. "The war ends today." Zorvith nodded, his voice a low growl. "The Kresh will lay down their arms." The chamber fell silent. The impossible had happened. The ancient enemies had made peace. The peace treaty was signed in the same chamber where it had all begun, the obsidian table gleaming under the starlight. Kalen and Zorvith stood on opposite sides, their postures rigid but their expressions unreadable. Elias stood between them, a pen in hand. "This treaty," he began, "marks the end of the Vaith-Kresh War. It is a new beginning, a chance to build a future without bloodshed." Kalen's mandibles clicked. "The Vaith accept these terms." Zorvith's crystalline form shimmered. "The Kresh accept these terms." Elias smiled, signing the treaty and passing it to Kalen, who signed it and passed it to Zorvith. When Zorvith finished, the chamber erupted in applause. The war was over. But as the celebrations began, Elias felt a sense of unease. The fungal bloom was gone, but what about the next threat? The universe was a vast and dangerous place, and humanity was still young. He walked through the cheering crowd, his thoughts elsewhere. He found Kalen and Zorvith standing alone, watching the stars. "It's done," Elias said, joining them. Kalen nodded. "It's done, but I don't know if it will last." Zorvith's mandibles clicked. "The old wounds run deep. It will take time." Elias sighed.